just give me a thumbs up. No worries. Sean did special request that you do the opening ceremonies.
Yeah, right.
He said, oh yeah, Ellen will do it. So if you'd like to. I won't call on you unless you say yes.
I can do it.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll get started here. First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Kaysville City Power Commission meeting. We open all of our commission meetings with the opening ceremonies, and we've asked Alan to give them today.
Our Father in heaven, we are thankful for the many blessings we enjoy. We are thankful for this good community we live in and for the many opportunities we have here. We are thankful for the opportunity to serve on the Power Board. Please help us to make wise decisions and recommendations, and keep in mind the needs of the community as a whole. We are thankful for the freedoms that we are blessed with here, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. And when I said we've asked him, I just really threw him to the wolves and asked him a few minutes before. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. So we'll start with introductions, and Jordan, if we'll start with you.
Sure. Jordan Stevenson. Patrick Hine.
Brock Thane.
Alan Farnes.
John Lovelace.
Susan Lee. Stacy Harvard.
Gary Hatch. Bruce Rigby.
Okay. So we'll dive right in. We have a full plate here. So the next one was the Power Commission assistance with AMI meter proposals. Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair Mr. Thane. Shane Scott. If I could quickly just say many thanks to Jordan and John and Alan and Susan for their attendance at the UAPS conference, and I'm sure you guys would have loved to have been there too, but then we realized I couldn't believe we got 4 of you, so that's amazing. So thank you for doing that. This is a really simple agenda item. Ryan has done a good job of telling you that on September 11th we're having those 3 AMI proposals. I think we received 4 responses, and we did kind of throw one out as staff. So we have 3 coming in, and we would love to have some of you there. So this is all that is if there's, it's from 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock to maybe 4:30. We had 3 presentations, about an hour and a half scheduled for each. I realize it's the middle of the day, probably very hard for most of you to come, but if any of you can come, we would love to have you. So if you want to try and obligate somebody to come, or if anybody can come, that's if nobody can, that's fine too.
You said the 12th?
The 11th.
Oh, the 11th?
I think it's a Monday.
I'll be out of town. Otherwise, I'd come.
And it is a full afternoon of AMI proposals. Who would rather be doing anything? Can you imagine? So
Let's see here.
Well, send out an invite to everyone.
Okay.
And maybe Sean can go.
Okay.
I don't know what his schedule
Great.
is.
We'll do that. We just wanted you to know that was the case, and we're glad that you worked out that all of you were able to watch utility. That was good too. So I know it's going to be hard to compare apples to apples in this scenario, but I think most of you are familiar with AMI enough to be dangerous. So, okay, I'll do that. I'll send out an invitation. If we can get some of you there, that'd be wonderful. So, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Okay, so next item was AMI meters. Maybe just, I guess, any thoughts, any things we should watch over, any things we'd recommend on, after that discussion. Again, September 11th at 1 o'clock. We'll try to have someone there. But is there any other final thoughts that we wanted to mention on AMI meters?
I think the discussion to this point has covered it pretty good in my mind. So,
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
I just really love, as a customer, to be able to pull up and see more real-time data and see feedback. That is just really valuable to me as a customer. And I've been able, using separate hardware that I've installed in a house, you can save a ton of money on your bill just by realizing how wasteful you are, and you make small corrections and plug the leaks. And so having that for everyone would just be, people are going to save a lot of money on their bill by being more aware. Yeah, and then the city, I think we can also use it to our advantage and curtail our peak usage. So
I guess a question on that would be, if we were looking to use the sample, do we have a facility that has solar, or would it be possible to put it at John's house where we could collect the data? I don't know how that would work. So would we be able to put it? Do we have a commercial building?
We have a substation close to John's house. It would pick him up readily.
Okay.
I volunteer. So.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome, just to see solar, see how you could try it out, see what your thoughts were, those types of things. If we're going to try it, that would be my recommendation.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that would be great.
So.
I'm not sure, as far as the water department, where they have their AMR meters installed. So that would be the only thing that might not integrate with that area.
Okay.
But we have solar spread all over everywhere, so we can
find something.
Yeah.
Curious how that water one works, because when they read the meter, they have to be right up to the little sensor to pull that data. I'm wondering how far those actually transmit.
I don't know about water.
I don't know that that's entirely correct.
Yeah,
Because I see them just running around my neighborhood. They're not
Oh, really?
anywhere. They're probably 15 feet away.
the
Actually,
city
they have some of
showed
each.
us.
They have,
Was
they have some of each,
one
though,
reader
too.
getting all
They're
of
different
those
types.
meters.
It's just amazing because they're typically in the ground, and so antennas do well when they're up high, and to be able to get that kind of coverage on the ground.
Don't you have the disc?
Yeah.
That's your antenna. So it's above the ground transmitting.
Well, it's at ground level, and it's not like on the side of a house.
True.
So, but yeah, that's amazing, phenomenal coverage they're getting. So.
Okay. The next topic is grandfathering. And so I think I would just throw it out there. I don't know if we've settled, but I think try to break this up a little bit to see, if we are able to come to an agreement on whether we feel like solar customers should be grandfathered, just kind of open up that dialogue. If we want to do grandfathering, how long, those types of things. So I think just on those topics.
I was given an action last month to look into that and come up with something for us to discuss. And if I could just take a minute to do that. So I talked with a few people. I spoke with Ryan Evans, who's the VP Business Community Relations Salt Lake Chamber guy. And I also talked with an individual who helps draw up plans for people that do home installs. I've talked with several residents who have solar panels, and kind of the typical return on investment. I think the whole. So first, I'll go over why we want a grandfather, to give people that have made this investment. The city has offered net metering, and people have made this investment based on that. So we're giving them an opportunity to recoup their investment before they go back and become kind of under the new standard of rates for solar customers. So a typical solar install that's hired out is 15 to 20 years currently, and some of them are as high as 23 years from the people I'd talked to. And talking with Ryan Evans, he recommended minimum of 15, but maybe as high as 20. And I think about the customers that are beyond that. Well, maybe that was just a poor investment to have something that takes 23 years to recover. So maybe we make the cap 20 years, and that's as far out as we go. Let's see. So I would recommend no longer than 20 years, but no sooner than 15 years. I think that's ample opportunity for the average customer with solar panels that's hired it out to recoup that investment. Obviously, homeowners that have done it themselves, they're going to have a much shorter investment, but I don't know if that's probably the exception and not the rule. Most people are hiring this out.
Can we tell the difference?
I don't think we
Does the city
can.
know who's put their own system in and who's
Building
paid?
inspection department would have that information, yes.
Okay.
So now there is one concern I have about grandfathering, and maybe this isn't even an issue. But if the power company requires the homeowner to change their wiring, for example, on my house, I've got the inverter goes straight into the breaker box in the basement. That was 7 years ago. That was how it was done. But now, today, if you were to get solar today, you have to run it from the inverter straight to the power meter and then to the breaker box. And so if grandfathering required that wiring to be changed, I don't think it would be fair for the homeowner to have to front that cost. And maybe this isn't even an issue. Maybe we just accept it for the way it is because it's still backfeeding, it's still working. But that might be an issue that comes up. Maybe down the road we'll want to know exactly how much their panels are producing versus what they're backfeeding. Although this virtual AMI system would be able to read that anyway, so maybe that's not an issue after all if we went with the virtual system. So that was just one concern, is if there was some rewiring that had to be done, maybe we credit the homeowner $500 or some monetary value to make that correction. Obviously, it's on the customer side of the meter, so it's really not the city's responsibility. But if the city is requiring them to do that, then we should probably give them some sort of compensation for that. But I recommend just throwing a number out, 20 years as a grandfathering number. And let's discuss.
Now, the grandfathering would be from the start date that they signed up with the solar with the city. So not everyone would go 20 years from when we're implementing this. Is that what everyone agreed with? So if somebody signed up 15 years ago, they would still have 5 more years of grandfathering. Is that right?
I've seen it done both ways, to be honest. I don't think we've discussed it, have we?
No, I don't think we
it
have.
came up a little bit. We kicked it around last time. I don't know that we settled, but I think I would support what Susan just mentioned. If we have the ability to do it at that level of detail, I think that would be a fair way to
Is
go.
that a possibility, Bruce, to know?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have when the new net meter was installed, we have that date.
Okay. So.
I'm open.
Okay.
If we, on the one hand, it would be that would seem like a fair method, because someone who put the money in back then, they would want that amount of time. Mm-hmm. Although someone who did it 15 years ago, they're probably going to be out. Their return on investment's probably going to be longer than 20 years. So I don't know if that's entirely fair. Yet on the other hand, we have like Rocky Mountain Power. They just said 2037, 2035, and that's the cutoff date period. So we could go date of install and try to figure that out, or we can say deadline, here it is.
But as far as staff, what do you see in this, as far as with you and what you deal with? Would you think that grandfathering, or can you give us your take, I guess, on one way or the other? grandfathering it according to when they signed up versus just having them all sunset at the same time?
Either way, it works either way.
Either way is fine with the city?
Yep.
If we go,
Just
go
if
ahead.
it helps at all, just to put the subsidy into perspective, I think the impact we're talking about is a $200 change annually on the customers. We have about 200 customers. I don't know how much it's grown recently, but I'm just going to say 200.
160 right now installed.
160. So if I just do the math here, 160, and we're talking about 200 per year, we're talking about a $32,000 annual amount. So if you're going over 20 years for the full amount, that's $640,000. If you do it from the date of installation, I don't know exactly how it turns out, but you may probably most of those were installed recently, so you might be cutting off a few years from that. So maybe the $640,000 is more like $500,000, $400,000 or $500,000. I'm not sure. So I guess just to put it into dollars, that's kind of the difference. You're asking ratepayers to cover. So,
And I think to that point, I think if you put it in perspective, I can't remember what number I was when I installed solar on my house, but it was right around 2011, and I think I was like 10th. So I think most people are going to be from 2011 forward, somewhere in there.
Yeah, we've gone from, in the last 2 years, as of July, we had 50. So we've gone to 160 in 2 years. So, yeah, been 110 in 2 years.
So to Bruce's point, it's probably not a material difference one way or another, because most of your customers are about 20 years out, maybe a little less anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know that I mind.
My feeling is if you get, I don't want to, I do have a conflict where I have solar on my house, so I don't want to throw out, so I'm just going to throw suggestions out, but I think if you get in the range of 15 to 20, as John mentioned, and you do it either way, I think accounting-wise it's going to be difficult because, you're going to have March 1st, March 20th, those types of things. So I think that would be difficult to manage. So I do like, and Rocky Mountain Power did just sunset everybody at the same time. So I think that might be better. But the reality is I think as long as you get, I'm with John, as long as you get in the 15 to 20 year range, I don't think people will complain there. So.
Okay.
So.
Too bad Dean left.
John, did you do those numbers off of Rocky Mountain's rates or Kaysville rates though? When you asked the sales, what rates were they based on?
Those were just typical installs that customers had done and what their return on investment would be.
Because they did mine at Rocky Mountain rates, not at Kaysville rates.
Oh, okay.
So I'm sorry, just trying to throw something.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. It kind of varied. It was a blend of Kaysville, Bountiful, and Rocky Mountain Power customers.
I think we're somewhere between 10 and 15% lower in electric cost if you compare us to Rocky Mountain Power. So you may have 10 to 15% variance on that number then, if we're comparing the two.
So if we would, I don't want to take over your duties here,
Oh,
but
please.
just trying to get a consensus then of what the recommendation you would like to send to the council as far as, do you want it to be everyone sunset together, or do you want to do it where they sunset? And I would say if you did it from the date, 20 years from the date that they signed up, then I wouldn't do it on the exact day. I would do it that year. Everyone that year would be at the end of the year. They would cut those ones off and move on. But just my thoughts here. But what's the consensus? Do you want to say right now, or do you want to think about it more? Because I'd really like to get some feedback on what everyone's thinking on this.
I kind of like just a hard, fast date. This is the end, period, and for every customer.
Okay, and what about you, Alan? What are your thoughts? Well, I need to hear it from both, not just the solar people.
my thoughts on this is I don't really want to send one piece to the council at a time. I think we should prepare a whole package.
I agree, but this is going to be in the package as part of, we're going to have to make a recommendation with the package on this part of it.
And I don't think it's going to make a lot of difference one way or the other.
Okay,
If we do them all at once or a piece at a time. I think you can track the few each year. It's not going to be that difficult, but
so
I don't have a preference. I don't see it.
Okay, so if we did it just like Rocky Mountain, you'd be happy. What about you, Patrick?
I actually like the date of sign up. So whenever that meter was installed, 20 years, that's what's fair. Because a guy that signed up before Brock, I mean, if we make a hard, fast cutoff, he might be 30 years grandfathered, as opposed to what's fair to everybody is a 20-year. We know when the meter went in, we can calculate 20 years, and then it's fair. It's fair for everybody. So if we're looking for fairness, the minute that meter was installed, 20 years. That's my feeling.
Okay. And Jordan?
The way you explain that makes a lot of sense, the way Patrick explained that. So I think I'd support Patrick. But if we ended up having more on the other side, I'm not too passionate about that, so that's fine.
Okay.
One thing to be the devil's advocate there, there are, I don't know how many, but there are a percentage of them that, like John, did an initial install and then years later added more on. So you're going to have to deal with that.
A little
also.
tricky.
Yeah.
And I think maybe if you don't mind, tell us when you started and how much you paid. Just give it a price per watt, and then give us the years, because I think that is a big thing. Is how much was your price per watt in your first installation? How much was your price per watt in your second installation, and what dates?
Okay. Now both of my installations were self-installed, and the first one was 2010. And it was $3.75 per watt for that first install. Industry at the time was almost $6 a watt for labor and cost of installing. The second install was 2015, and that was about $2 a watt. So just for full disclosure here, the first one has paid for itself. The second one, because you only get the tax credit once on the state one, I'm paying pretty much more out of pocket, and that one has 4 more years before it pays for itself. So as a self-installer, I think everyone who self-installs is covered because, well, they do it out of sweat equity. So it's really they're paying for it in sweat and Band-Aids and hopefully not hospital visits, but they are paying for it. They're just not monetarily. So
let me ask you this question, to Bruce's question. Where do we take your net metering? Do we take it off of 2010 or 2015? If we were to do it, that's really the question, right?
Yeah, that's the question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it comes down to fair.
Correct.
When did John put in solar? Not what array did he put in. When did John start with solar? And what's the answer?
I would say, well, it could be either answer. I started in 2010, but I started the clock again in 2015.
When did the meter go on? 2010?
2010.
2010 is the start.
And then they went out.
You advanced your array in 2015. Mm-hmm. You added to your array, but you started in 2010, right?
Yeah.
When the meter went on is when the clock starts. Regardless of how big, or he put a natural gas generator in, or he did 15 more arrays, that's beside the point. John is unique in that he advanced his array. Most people, when they do this, it's going to be one shot. So John is the exception, not the rule, but he started in 2010. So if we're being fair, if I were to do it, my clock would start today. Okay, right? But I didn't, I'm not, and I don't, so, you know, my clock hasn't started, but John started in 2010.
And do we have both net metering applications on file, the original and the second one?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
See, I think
I have no,
Patrick
I have no
doesn't mind
recourse.
it.
I'm trying to think of something.
I'll have to come to John's defense on this one, because I agreed with you the last time, so I hope you don't mind if I balance it out now this time. But I feel like if our goal is to say we want to give our customers, we're under a certain set of rules, and they in good faith put forth an investment amount, and we want to give them an opportunity to recoup, whether it was their first or their second, they still had that same mindset both times. And so to me, it seems fair to go with the second one, because that, I mean, even though it was the second one, the old rules were still in play. And if our goal is to say, hey, we understand that was kind of the expectation and we should be fair, then the expectation didn't change with the second one. So it seems to me like the later date would be the second one, but
with the second one, he was warned that rate could be changed. Maybe not.
and now you're throwing a new wrinkle in I wasn't addressing.
It's not an easy. There's no easy answer to this.
Yeah.
Fortunately, there's.
I think if John makes a motion, we may be able to at least allow some people to disagree and some to agree, and we may be able to squeak something through.
Want me to make a motion? I motion if a customer has done multiple arrays, we go with the latter array and start the clock then.
At 20 years. Or, I'm sorry, you finish your motion.
So I kind of have a conflict of interest here, because as a solar customer, of course I want 20 years. Let's make it 50.
Well,
but
if you put that forward, you'll have everyone add one more panel next month.
I was already
Reset the
thinking that.
clock.
That's right.
Yeah,
good point.
Because therein lies the conundrum of it.
Well, if we,
Okay, we're going to do this. I'm going to reset the clock. I've had this for 15 years, but now I'm going to reset the clock because I put another panel up.
so that's a good argument for we should say, here's the deadline period. This is the sunset right now for everyone. That way we don't get into we don't have to have this discussion, and we can say, here's our sunset for every solar customer. And in fact, when you brought up the date of install, I wasn't even thinking about that. I was thinking of an arbitrary date. So I still like that idea.
I'm with John. I think it eliminates all the issues if we just pick a date, and no matter who it is, that's the date that it sunsets.
So if we as a council say 10 years, taking people that started in 2011 versus people that started now, because we're back to fair, because those of us that don't have solar are the ones paying for this. So fair for us would be, okay, 10 years out, there's the line in the sand. Agreed?
Yeah.
I don't know that I agree with the duration, but I would say that we would need to discuss the duration. I think that would be fair to look at, what those years and what the cost would be to bring it down.
The majority of these solar customers have been in the last couple of years, and even the last year. And if their return on investment is 20 year, then 10 years is really going to hurt them. And they put this in. They installed this. The net metering program was available for them, and they, in good faith, put all this money in.
But I'll defer to what Alan said. It's a gamble. They put in knowing that the risk was it could change. Right? Alan, did I misread that?
No, isn't that what they've all been told? This is not a guaranteed rate.
Right, and it's
Subject to
everybody's
change.
net metered agreement that is subject to change to any 30-day notice.
So looking at hey, they did this in good faith on a 20-year return. I disagree with that. They did this hoping to get a return on this. But unfortunately, in investing, sometimes hopes get smashed. So, and nobody can, hindsight's always 20/20, nobody can predict the future. So that's where I'm coming from. I think if we're saying we're trying to protect their investment, well, the unfortunate thing is it's an investment. It has the reality of losing. And I'm not saying that's how it's going to play out. I'm just saying that we can't look at it as trying to protect their investment. We have to look at this as a whole. So if we're going to draw a line in the sand, then we need to think where that line is going to be. But the influence cannot be, well, we need to protect their 20-year investment. That's not what we need to do, is protect Kaysville City's ability to provide power to all of its citizens in a cost-effective manner. So, once again, I'm running back to fair and not.
So what was the reason Kaysville put this incentive out in the first place? Why did they provide net metering? And when was that actually? Was that like in 96 or 2002?
No, I have to look back.
It
wasn't, well, yeah. Just did it because there was a need for it, and that we didn't ever see that it going to this extent, causing this issue, and people overbuilding that was the biggest problem.
Right.
There's people trying to go to 90, 100%, or, if they would have stayed at 60, 70%, we probably wouldn't be talking about this.
So I liked your one comment, and I think as we're thinking through this, I think it's just good to flip back to our mission statement. Kaysville City Power and Light's mission is to provide reliable electricity with superior customer service at a competitive price to all residents and businesses in Kaysville City. So just keep that in mind. That's our mission statement that we're thinking about, and we're making sure we're thinking about everything. I think to what you said earlier, Jordan, I believe you said that it was a $200 per year subsidy.
Yeah.
Per person. So the amount of money that we're talking is, if we went 20 years, would be roughly $4,000. But if you were to net present value that to today,
yeah,
what do you think that'd be?
Discount it back 20 years. I'm not sure what your discount rate would be.
I don't know.
I was warned last time not to do math in public.
That was me.
I think that was sage advice, but hearing the conversation, I think there's valid concerns on both sides of this, and I don't know that theoretically or mathematically or you're going to come up with a specific date that's going to be, fact. I think it's just a matter of weighing, the conundrum of evidence, and I think there's some good precedents with the stipulation that was just filed with Rocky Mountain Power, where the majority of the state now is going to have the opportunity to have grandfathering until 2037 for current customers. That's 20 years, right?
It's 18
years.
35.
Oh, 18.
2035.
Oh, is it 35?
Yeah.
And so, in a way, it seems like there might be some prudence in following that established schedule that the majority of the state is going to see as well. And so maybe I would submit that as an option to kind of mirror the Rocky Mountain Power Agreement.
The only thing I would caution on that is Rocky Mountain Power can absorb a deficit longer than, say, a Kaysville City. So that, using it, I think, is a good model, but mirroring it would not be. We just don't have the meter base. We don't have the revenue. There's no way. Rocky Mountain Power, that's, most of the western United States, plus they're a conglomerate of mid-America. So they can push it out 18 years and absorb it, and they'll be okay. But Kaysville City, I realize we're talking $500,000, but still, that's a chunk of money. That could be our AMI that we're looking at, or sorry, the metering program that we're looking at, and funded for 3 or 4 years. So
it's true.
I don't think we should go any shorter than 15 years. I still think about the investment of the homeowner, and even though you mentioned it's a risk to them, there's going to be a lot of angry people if we make it too short. And
I just listening on this, a good compromise might be to go ahead and do the 15 years, but to sunset once a year for those that meet the 15-year mark. So every, and do it going back to when they first signed up. So it would be, if you signed up in 2011, it'd be 15 years from 2011. And then at the end of that year, those people would be lopped off and so on. I think that's, rather than having them continue on for an additional 5 years just because we want to keep it all the same, I think a more equitable way to do it would be to sunset them all when they get the 15 years. So
I'm not commenting on it. I'm going to keep.
So is there more debate we want to have, or do we want to have a motion? Maybe on what Susan just proposed?
I think 15 years from date of install would be too short. I would rather do 20 years from date of install, and then we sunset if we went that way.
or do 18, which is the same as Rocky Mountain.
Well, Rocky Mountain is doing 18 from this January.
This January on.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in that way, you're kind of combining one less favorable from the solar customer perspective. You're taking a favorable and an unfavorable and kind of cutting the baby in a way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to add one more wrinkle to this that I think is worth noting is this per meter or per customer? Because that's also a big issue as well. Does that grandfathering stay with that meter, or does that stay with the customer?
Bruce, how would you do that?
I would say per
Well,
customer.
the way it's written now, that if they move, then the net metering agreement is null and void. The new people would be on the new program once if they sold their house. They'd have to start
I would
with
agree with
whatever.
So
our
it'd
net
be
metering
per
agreement
customer, is what you're saying, not meter?
Yeah.
So
Rocky Mountain Power is per meter.
meter.
Ours is always been.
Really?
Per meter. And the reason is for what you just mentioned, right, is if you go to sell your house and you're underwater in your solar array and you can't push those new rates to the next person, then you're under the water. So I think we have to think through all three of those variables and then find the right compromise. So right now, we've got 15, 18, 10, and 20. And then we have to discuss the per meter per customer, and then the sunset date. Is it from install or just a 15 years from essentially today, or when we start? So those are the three variables that we have to make sure we take care of. But the exciting part is I haven't heard anyone say that we're not grandfathering, so we're all in agreement that we should grandfather.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alan?
Politically, we should, yes.
Now wait, this is why we pay you guys the big bucks.
Grandfathering is fair. It's fair. They went in hoping for a return on investment. I see that. I get that.
Well, how much difference is there between the grandfathered rate and the proposed alternative?
$200 a year.
$200 a year for that meter. So it's small. It is. But once again, it's small. I mean, it's not,
It's 150 or 60
people.
people.
Grandfathering is fair. Now, the extent of time, I am a lesser. Sorry. Like, it's It's like the staff said, we couldn't foresee this. If they could have foreseen this, I mean, this would not be an issue. That would have been handled at the time of the install. But at 2007, 2005, even 2000, everybody was hoping to cut their bill in half, not go 100% off-grid. Technology wasn't there to do it. It's becoming more of a reality now.
The net meter was the only option when this program started. That was the only option available to the utility.
Once again, I default to the information. Why don't utilities bill differently? Because they can't pull the data. They don't have the meter to pull the data. Well, now we're getting there.
Yeah. Yeah, now we have other options.
And solar's improving. I mean, 60, that's a joke. You should be at somewhere around 80% if you've got solar cutting your bill.
So if this was your call, Patrick, and yours alone, what would your deadline for grandfathering be?
It'd be 10 years after the meter
10
went
years?
up, building. And only because we know what we know now. And it's sad, but I guess it's like cutting the baby in half. Somebody's going to lose. Right now, it's those of us that don't have solar are the ones losing because we're the ones subsidizing. And I get that. It's only a small percentage of people that have the solar, and hopefully more will jump on. But the reality is it's us that's picking up the bill. So I'm trying to tourniquet. I'm trying to be the voice of that person that will never put solar on their house. They'll never do alternative. They will pay their bill religiously and go on with their life. So I have to be that person at this table, because two of you here, you have the subsidy and you're being subsidized for it. And I think that's great. That's a good way to use the system, but we're drawing a line in the sand. So if it was mine and mine alone, it would be a stark line and it would be quick. And then everybody would get on the same page and we'd all move down together. But that's just me. You asked of me, and that's just me.
Okay.
One other question on that before you leave. Is that per meter or per customer?
For me, I would keep it at the meter.
Okay.
It would be non-transferable. If you sold your house today, your array stays with your house. You don't get it. Well, I guess you could move it if you wanted to. Most will not. So I would assume that it would stay on with the property. That's how it would be a non-transferable warranty. That's the only word I can think of right now. But it would stay with the home. I do know that back in the day, the natural gas generators were big. Well, you could disconnect that. I mean, 2 lines and a couple leads, you could take that generator with you. Solar array is a little bit different animal. Probably not going to leave.
Probably not.
Premises.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to leave 70 holes in your roof.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe just take the wiring so it can't produce power.
So I agree with Patrick on that part. I would leave it with the meter, not with the customer.
I'm just tallying some things up here. Question on that would be, I think the risk that we all face, right, is do you take, and maybe John, maybe you talk about this, and there is a public filing on this where battery rates are today. I think that the risk is you will have people like Patrick, you're going to have people like John, and I'm going to keep myself right in the middle. And I think the question is what is the ultimate risk of stranded capital, right? At the end of the day, I think our mission statement says that we're interested in the app and how do we provide value to our customers. I feel, my personal feeling is that if you do not provide that value, I think you give those customers a reason to want to leave. And I think there's also studies, and maybe it's a UAMP posting, but I believe that, and maybe you shouldn't quote exact numbers either, but there are customers that will leave the utility if given the choice. And that's been because of brand recognition, poor experiences, those types of things. And I can find the report and send it. It was a national study, but it was it was a very high number that will.
Well, take Hawaii. When they did away with net metering in Hawaii, 1,000 people left the grid in the first 3 months. Like, they went off grid. You can do that easier in Hawaii, but still, they jumped ship.
So we would have 160 people jump ship?
Probably not all
You
of
would
them.
have a large majority of those people
Yeah.
jump ship. Maybe not all 160, because there are some that have east-facing arrays, as John pointed out. You would have a large majority of them go.
I disagree with that. You can't do it here as easily as you can in Hawaii. I'll bet you wouldn't get 10% of them.
Because of our winters.
Yes.
Actually, if not counting heating or transportation, it's really easy. You just size your array larger, and with battery costs coming down, it's doable.
So if you were to look, just to kind of talk through this, if you were to look at some of the comments that were posted, that was presented to the Public Service Commission, I believe the rates that they posted for battery storage was 3 to 5 cents a kilowatt hour. So we're asking for 8.8 from a customer. We're already below that number to be. And this is big utility scale projects, but it happened the same way with solar PV. John just told you that his installation costs in 5 years are about half.
And they project another half. I mean, just looking at the trending, like an array that costs $5,000 today, in 2 years will be $2,500 easily. And the battery and the solar array you'll have less panels producing more power and better storage capability than today.
I'm still on track to go off grid by 2020. Just throwing it out there.
So right now we have.
So if you want to give everyone time to think about it, and we'll come back to it. If we don't, maybe wait till Sean gets here.
So yeah, so let's.
Can be the.
Let's do this. I think that's a great idea. Let's see. So right now, on the table, we have the year start, and does that start from installation, or does that start from all together? So that's the first thing I think we'll put in there, and we'll vote on that next time. The duration is it 10 years? Is it 15? Is it 18 or is it 20? That's what I have. I'm just going to write those down. And then the next one, which sounds like we may be ready, and if we are, we can. So far, we have 2 people that are interested in keeping it per the meter. Is there anybody that's, I guess, that opposes that piece per the meter?
I would be willing to compromise and make it non-transferable.
I think per the meter, that stays with that meter, right? Is my understanding. And it stays with the home, right? So that's not even, I think it's staying there. Even if you were to move out, it would stay on that meter.
So the grandfather, are we talking about grandfathering still? So if the customer moves away, the grandfathering is done.
And then they go on the new.
Okay.
I would be on board with that.
Okay.
I'm willing to
Let me
give you that one.
write that.
Stays with the meter.
So I think we should vote on it after you see everything. I think you're right, Susan. So we'll curtail this and we'll talk about it next time. But we'll just say stays with the meter number. Okay. Any other final thoughts on that?
If we can agree on 15 years, I'm willing to go to 15.
Put it on the table
Yeah,
right now?
From like today.
Like buy it now? It
Yeah.
expires in
Yep.
5?
Uh-huh.
I like your style.
Just so we can get stuff done.
I think if you wanna make the motion,
Should we try a vote?
see.
Let's try our very first vote.
Yeah,
We've never
As
done a
approved.
motion.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I make a motion to have grandfathering expire 15 years from January 2018. So 2035, 2033, let's see, 2118, 2033. I make a motion to make grandfathering expire for all existing solar customers January 1st, 2023.
33.
33? Yes, 2033.
And with that, just so I'm clear, we're saying that when a customer moves and another customer moves in, just to get back to the per customer per meter discussion, the new customer who moves into the house inherits the meter and it stays with the meter, or we're saying they are now...
The grandfathering goes away
Grandfathering
with the
goes
new
away.
customer.
But politically,
Okay.
that is not a good move.
Semantics get a little confusing.
We need to leave it with the home, with the meter, because that investment's still there. And they can
See,
sell
but I
that
think
in-
Alan's saying something different from what you're saying.
Well, no, I'm saying it stays with the meter at the house.
Yes.
Is that not what Alan said?
Yes.
So if it stays with the meter, that means it's there till 2033 and 5 people can benefit from that.
Yes.
Otherwise, you lose that value. The homeowner loses that
Okay.
value and can't
So when you
resell.
said it's not transferable,
even though it's
you weren't talking
only-
about from customer to customer.
Correct.
The difference between the two rates is only a $200 a year value.
Right.
But they're going to receive something much more than that.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Well, if you're willing to go with that,
And I
I'll-
think that's
I'll
different from
change
what
my
John
vote.
said.
Yeah, John wants to draw A to B, right? You're saying we pick a date, July,
Mm-hmm.
and from July 15 years out, everything goes, right?
So no pressure. We only have 2 minutes left on it still. It's about to expire. Just kidding. Keep talking.
So if
Let's
it's
do that.
if it's per meter, then we're saying that agreement is good for 15 years, and it stays with that address, and whoever moves in gets the same rates until 2033, and then that particular meter is now on the new rate structure, whatever it is at that time.
That sounds good to me.
I'll second John's proposal there.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Nay.
That's okay, Patrick.
I know.
Get
Somebody's
our
got
first
to.
vote.
Yeah. I think we're good with that one then.
Like we should
Very good.
celebrate.
Yeah.
Ah, we got our first one.
Okay, so,
So 15.
so just make sure we have that correctly. Stays with the meter 15 years from January 1st and 15 years from January 1st of 2018. Moving on to the next one, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jordan, and I think we just start with, we'll be discussing topics C, E, H, I, J, and M. And I think if you just go in that order.
Yeah. Sorry, it's a little scrambled here. So these we only picked out those because that's all the things that are in the model. And so the model that we looked at last time hasn't changed other than a few little caveats. The calculations are all the same. So I didn't even pull up the model because I think we're sick of it. But I'm just going to summarize where it's at. And this is kind of the proposal that I would submit to everybody. So for the transition period for Schedule A, I think what we're saying by that is that going forward, when new customers enroll, we are going to have today's current schedule that I'm proposing, and then once we have smart metering capability, whether it's futility or some of these others that we're looking at, the transition would flip into the time of use structure. So I don't think we have a defined period on that until we get farther down the road and we know when that technology will be online. So I think that's all I have to say on the transition period for Schedule A. Getting to the specific fees here, the net metering fee, I'm not sure if we meant fee or if we meant rate that they would receive. So I'll just tell you what that is. So the excess production credit, meaning when you're overproduced in the month and you get a credit for that, is at, I'll give you all the decimals here, 0.06608 cents today.
So one more time.
0.06608.
My question on that would be, does that fluctuate? So now that we're there, does that fluctuate with inflation and deflation? Or is that set for the 15 years?
So
obviously-
my understanding is the 15 years
That's right,
is for current customers on
That's
the
right.
current structure, right? So this
That's
is
right.
just going forward. And I think we would do, I see it as an annual process where we update the model. Now the structure's there. We have the city financials in the format that we have them. So hopefully we can just kind of put all the inputs into the model, see where we're at, see if we have to adjust rates. And the solar credit would also be assessed at that time. Our year end is a June 30th year end, or is it June 30th?
June 30th.
So the way I see it is that each beginning in July or August, we start to refresh that model and have these meetings, and then by about this time, a year from now, we're tweaking the rates to where they should be, and we just kind of stay on top of it on an annual basis. That way we don't get too far down the road and we have to have big
I agree.
swings. So
I think that's fair.
So so annually, not only would we be discussing the solar credit, but we'd be discussing rates as well.
yeah,
for
we would do a
everyone?
whole rate
Okay.
refresh. I would, is the way.
Because we have the information.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it would be simple. We just plug it in, and the number would come out.
Now that would happen with us for 2 years or whatever it is, maybe even less with what we heard today. But once we go into time of use, we would have a change, and then I would propose we do the same kind of thing as each year. We take the financials from the last year and we forecast out and we refresh the rates to whatever we feel like they should be.
I like that. That's more accurate than inflation. That's real actuals.
Right.
That's really fair.
So
We
that's
like fair.
That's right.
so that's the net metering
So
credit.
Before you leave that,
Yeah.
the other question, where this is the new tier, who pays for, one of the things that Rocky Mountain Power did require as well is as we advance the meters, they charge a $60 fee. So if for the solar customer, so I do think that might be a fair thing as well as, if we wanted to put a fee on the solar customer to start tracking like we want, I think a fee would be relevant. So I'm just writing in our residential class, we may want to look at a fee and
Is that like an annual fee or a monthly fee or
just
a one-time?
upfront.
An upfront fee?
It's very beneficial to do an upfront, so I would
Okay.
strongly recommend an upfront fee.
Okay. Now, we have another agenda item, I think, that was meant to talk about an upfront fee. Is it on here?
Yeah, I think that's the permit cost.
The permit cost. So would this fall into that category?
Yeah, we can put that on D. I'll put that on D, and we're gonna push D to when Sean's here. He did all that research with Bruce. So,
Okay.
but can we, before we leave that, do you want to vote on that as far as the 6.6 cents? I know we're trying to check some things off here.
Sure. Yeah, I would make a motion to adopt a 6.6 cent credit to the overproduction of, I don't know the best way to term that, but the solar, meaning that if you offset your own usage behind the meter, you're just offsetting the retail rate, and then once you start putting back onto the grid, it's a lower rate of 6.6 cents.
So everything being backfed.
0.06.
That's exactly
Oh,
how to
yeah.
say it.
Yeah,
Point
$0.06608.
Right.
Good catch.
Let's not make it 60 cents. Let's get that
Bruce would be
decimal
running
there.
in.
That's right.
I kept hitting 0.6, and I'm like, wait. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
So I think your terminology was right. It was backfed.
backfed.
Backfed. Yes.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Clarify the period of time, please.
This would be in effect until we,
Reevaluate.
Meaning is it instantaneous or monthly?
it would be a monthly credit.
Please put that in the.
So to discuss that, So the credit that we're backfeeding, normally that accrues over the entire year. This would be reconciled every month on the bill.
I'm not proposing a change. I see Bruce nodding.
Every month it'd be cleaner.
Every month.
Every month?
That's what the
Every month.
building
That's actually
department
what
has
we're doing. Okay,
requested.
we'll go.
Yes.
Okay.
So
So,
let's
it would,
stick with the
so if they have a
monthly.
credit, it would be taking off their water and sewer bill. And once those go to zero, they would actually get a physical credit.
I think it'd stay separate. As I talked to the finance guys, it'd be separate. Wouldn't have anything to do with,
So we do have a,
Wouldn't credit it to the water or sewer or anything. It all stay separate.
It'd all be separate.
Power only.
Okay.
Okay.
and we can keep those separate. It is on item L for a monthly true-up for solar customers. So if you want to just
Okay.
propose the rate,
So we know what the rate is, but we can vote separately on how exactly we want to net it.
if we want to, yes.
Okay, let's do that and take that piecemeal. I would keep the motion as the 0.06608 credit
Dollars.
and we're talking dollars with that, on back-fed production from solar panels.
Are there any questions to the motion? I would just clarify that that's residential.
That's the residential rate, yep.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And I'm just, if you don't mind, I'm going to abstain from voting just because I'm going to be on the final decisions on
Sure.
all of these things. So
Yep.
Okay.
I'm abstaining.
That makes sense.
I'm sure Sean said aye as well.
He said he supported us.
Okay. While we're on specific rates, well, let me see what the next item is here. On item I, we have review Schedule A. So if we do that now, we can just say we knocked out all of residential. So I'll just do that and tell you the rates as they were in the model. This hasn't changed from last time, but for the first 1,000 kilowatt hours, we have 0.08613 cents. Now, I'm sorry I didn't have this in the packet, but if you guys want to follow along, I have enough for people in the audience today too, and we can post it online, I'm sure.
We can just pass those down.
This is what I'm reading, and so it's all going to be public, but just so you don't have to be writing down a bunch of notes, I wrote it down for you.
Take one and pass it down. I'm a teacher.
How many more do you
I think
have?
it's keep them going.
Send it clear down.
Sorry.
Keep
it
them
all the way
going.
down?
I've got one, so.
No, I just saw everyone scribbling down rates, and I didn't want your
keep
hands to get
going.
tired. But
We'll just hand you a whole
kept
bunch at
one,
once.
yeah.
Okay.
Now this is first, okay, yes.
So you can just follow from the top line there. For residential class, the first 1,000 kilowatt hours would be billed at $0.08613, and then all additional would be billed at $0.09717. And then we would implement a customer charge of $8, and that would make up the billing for that. And I would make a motion to adopt that as the new rate that we propose to the city council.
Residential rate.
Residential class rates, yes.
Are there any questions to the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Item H concerns the commercial class, specifically demand. And this is a change from where we are at today. We talked about this last time, but we're proposing 3 commercial classes going forward. And I've tried to outline all of the cutoffs here. So just starting with commercial class A, I'd propose that customers with a maximum demand of less than 9 kilowatt measured over the previous 12 months would be included on commercial class A. And the billing would be 0.08084 cents for the first 1,000 kilowatt hours. Up from 1,001 to 9,000 kilowatt hours would be 0.05838 cents. And then all above 9,000 kilowatt hours would be billed at 0.04260 cents. And a customer charge of $11 would also be implemented monthly.
Before you go too far on that, Can we
Yeah.
just jump to your sensitivity analysis?
Yeah. So I'll talk about all the customers really quick. So for a typical residential customer, these rates would result in approximately a 5% impact on the bill over a year. So it'd be a 5% increase. And that actually holds true for almost all commercial customers. I looked at Class A and B, and it's all within that range. It varies a little bit by customer based on load, especially when you get into the demand charge, but it was in single digits and close to 5%. The class that varied the most is Commercial C, the large commercial customers, and I think that's consistent with what our rate study from Utility Financial Solutions found as well, is that currently the commercial customers, the high-use customers, are paying less than cost of service. And so there was a more significant impact on the bill, and it got into the double digits percentage-wise. And so what I'm proposing, you'll see on Class C, is that we ease into it over 2 steps. So for the power charge, that would begin at $11.59. That's up from, I think we're at $8 today, maybe $7.
It's 8.06.
8.06. And then the full cost calculated in the model is $14.49. If we wanted to do full cost today, we would do $14.49. But I think that you would impact large commercial customers by, in some cases, 20% or more, which could result in some rate shock that I wouldn't advise. So the $11.59, I think, keeps them to the single digit on impact, and then over 2 years, we would get up to the full cost on the commercial Class C. And then the industrial class was actually similar to the high commercial class, and so I've proposed ease in a 3-step process up to $9 for a power charge in year 1, $11 after that, and then full cost is $13.28.
And then I think while you guys are looking at that, I think if you guys wanted to look at the rate schedule that was in your packet, that's for every Rocky Mountain Power rate schedule for residential, small commercial, and a few other large commercial and those types of things. So there's one piece that's out there that's a summary. If you guys wanted to look at that, I think the residential class, you could see that is a per service customer charge of between $6 and $12, so we're really close on that. And then, as Jordan mentioned, our rates are going to be substantially lower, and you said I think it's 15% lower than Rocky Mountain Power.
Yeah, when I took the typical residential customer size compared to what they currently charge, it's about 15% different.
Okay. And then the Schedule 23 would be pretty similar to commercial Class A. So you could see that we're, within $1 on the demand charges, and then your billings are, to be honest, really good for commercial rates because there is a demand charge on Schedule 23. So Rate A is really advantageous. And then Schedule 6 would be a blend between B and C. So if you look at 6, we have a substantially lower KW charge, demand charge, or customer charge. They're 13, but where he crossed the line was on a 59 on a Class C. And then the price per kilowatt hour is blended, so this one's really hard to look at. But it's equivalent if you blend them. It's about 5 cents a kilowatt hour if you were to blend those together on Schedule 6. There's a 6B in there and a 6A in there. And then the industrial client is more similar to Schedule 8. So we do have a little bit charger. On your industrial class, you have about $20 more on that, but you can see that the demand charges are really high, and the price per kilowatt hour is going to blend really close, actually, right around probably 3.5 cents. So I think that those are really similar. I'd say the only one that may be a little bit different would just be the Class C on the demand side.
But all in all, very competitive.
Yeah, I think
If
so.
not better.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think better on most. The only one that I would say that's probably not, is probably close is Class C. And that's just going to depend on your demand charges. You know, if you have a big demand and a low usage, and you know, you're kind of looking at 6A, and 6B, and you're kind of blending all three together, come up with what C would look like.
Yeah. And that was what I saw. There's a wide variance in that class because we go from 2/3 of the commercial customers are 38 kilowatts of demand or less. And then the top third, you go from 38 all the way up to 638 kilowatt of demand. And there's a wide variance in how the load comes in. So some load profiles are smooth and some have spikes, and so it's hard to say what the typical customer would look like in there, but I think if we ease it in the way I have it presented here, you would really mitigate any rate shock from adopting these rates. So, and then for any listeners there, we can kind of summarize these vocally here. So for the commercial classes, these volumetric rates are all consistent. The first 1,000 kilowatt hours, you have 8.084 cents. And the next 1,001 to 9,000 kilowatt hours are 5.838 cents. And all additional would be 4.26 cents. And then the customer charge would be $11 on Class A. On Class B, the kilowatt hour charge is similar. The customer charge is $13 per month, and then a power charge is introduced for all kilowatt over 9 kilowatts, and that's $11.59. And then for Class C, it's $59 customer charge, and the power charge we would ease into it at $11.59 in year one, and a full cost $14.49 in 2019. And then the final class is the industrial class. The kilowatt hour rate is 3.338 cents. Customer charge is $90 per month, and the power charge for all KW over 9. For all KW, is $9 in year one, $11 in year two, and then full cost in year three, which is currently $13.28. And I'd reiterate again, each year as we update this, by the time we get to year three, that may be slightly different. I just show that here just so we know what full cost is today, so we know which direction we're headed. So I would make a motion and entertain any further questions as well, but I'd make a motion to adopt the commercial classes as presented, as well as the industrial class with these rate structures.
Are there any questions?
It's a lot of information.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Can we just put in there that we don't have the net metering piece put together for that?
For the commercial class? Yeah, absolutely.
So that would be.
And I would support studying more thoroughly. I think for me, I focused almost solely on residential currently, but I think that's something we should study.
Okay.
How many commercial solar customers do we have in the city?
Commercial solar, got some small ones that are, we only have 2 that are doing any kind of metering.
Okay. Is that the DATC in the elementary school?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you've got 265 kW and a 60 kW, right? That's what I have wrote down.
Yeah.
Yep, so I'll tack onto my motion that this is not meant to address the solar agreement at this time, and we can entertain further discussion around commercial solar going forward. So,
Okay, any other questions to the motion? All in favor?
Wait,
We
did you
need
get
a
a second?
second.
Oh.
I'll second it.
okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We talked a bit about sensitivity analysis. We're in the single digits with the average around 5% impact. We've talked about the total subsidy for solar customers under current rates. We're at around $200. Going forward onto our temporary schedule that I'm proposing here with the move to 6.6 cents, that drops to $150. And so we're not eliminating the subsidy immediately. The time of use will eliminate the subsidy. And currently, if you calculate the time of use rates, the off-peak credit would be 4.6 cents, rounding a little bit. The on-peak credit would be 10.9 cents. And the on-peak time is between 5 and 9 p.m. So that would result in a full cost of service for solar customers.
So the off-peak would go from 6.6 cents approximately down to 4.6 cents?
Right.
And then the on-peak would go from 6.6 up to 10.9.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess the question would be going back to the transition period, and we were resetting that rate. Is that if you were to buy solar and then you were in the same boat as we are, right now, how do we handle solar customers coming on with time of day? Would we run a transitional period?
What I'd propose is that after we draw our line in the sand, after the council approves of this current plan, we publish which direction we're going, we make it public, and all customers going forward will roll onto the time of use immediately once the technology has been adopted, and we can do that. And as far as the rates go themselves, these are the currently calculated rates, and we'd refresh it annually as new cost inputs are available, if that makes sense, just based on the utility financials and the cost to serve going forward.
So I think I understand. Let me clarify. So what you're saying is in the net metering application, we would just say that you are subject to Schedule A, just like we've stated before. You're subject to Schedule A, and any changes. I think that you'll probably have a little bit of issues with it, just because there's uncertainty. There's more uncertainty now. Leaving it to us to make the decision, I think, would be hard for people to buy, to be honest, to purchase solar moving forward. So I would almost say that we had a transition, and then everyone after that transition would move to the time of day.
So you're saying we adopt this particular schedule, and then we have another grandfathering type period?
I think you have yeah, that's right. So just like Rocky Mountain Powers, you have a grandfather, and then you have a transition until AMI meters can go in. And then from AMI forward, they have a different transition.
We're only talking $160 a year difference. I don't think that's necessary.
Cash flow wise, I'd be willing to bet that, what is your solar array offset a year, dollar-wise? Do you know off the top of your head?
Let's see.
I was going to have to do some calcs.
It's about 15. You mean like the value? Yeah, probably about $1,500.
So I've got a 6.2
Pull it up
kW.
here. Monthly here.
So it's 8.
Oops.
And we're going to pay
This is really slow.
about 8.8 cents.
Try that again. So I consume 1,800 kilowatt hours, and I produce about 1,700 or 18,000. I consume and I produce 17,000. So I pay for about 1,100 kilowatt hours a year.
So I think if you were to say that, what is just the solar production? How many did you say? 17,000?
Solar production 17,000.
So if you take 17,000 times by your blended average is roughly 8.8.
0.8, yeah.
So if you take that times by 0.088, that's $1,500 is what his solar array would produce per year.
Currently.
And if you take mine, which is a 6.2 kW system, it produces about 785. So if you blend those together, just to kind of give you at least two sample size, you're going to get about 1140. So on 200 on 1140, you're taking, it's about 17%. And then if you were to go to 150, I guess it would be 13%. So just to step back, I'll summarize. So basically, your question was, it's $150. What I was trying to give an analogy is, between his system's about double my size. My system only offsets at $785 a year, so $150 of $785 is a big chunk of that system cost. And then, if you were to take that down to a bigger system like his, 150 on 1,500 is 10%. So just to kind of give you a percentage of how much that money would actually cost.
Well, but his 200 is the average, isn't it, or the 160 difference
It's
is
a
an
typical.
average.
So mine's going to be
So
like
if-
$400 probably instead of 150, because I'm a large consumer and producer.
You'll be less than the 150 if that's the average, or 160.
Yeah, and I think if I think through the concern that you raised, Brock, that we don't want to create, if there's still uncertainty going forward, there will be a window of time between now and time of use where investment is made. But what I would say is that I think we can create a billing calculator, because the difference between us and Rocky Mountain Power is that Rocky Mountain Power doesn't know what 2020 is going to look like yet.
Right.
But we know what time of use is going to look like. And in fact, we have rates based on today's costs, probably won't change a lot. And so I would even propose creating a calculate your bill kind of assistance for customers who are considering going solar, where they can today see what their bill will be today, but then in time when we go into time of use, they can see what their bill would be so that there's no surprises. And in that case, I don't know that I see a need for the grandfathering if we're able to do that.
So I would agree. If you have that up front, I think the hard part is how we're in the boat we're in right now, which we've talked about, right, is we didn't give that information to them up front.
Yeah.
And so now I feel like there's a yeah.
Right. The last 110 people have known for the last 2 years that it was changing. So
I know
For
we've
those
talked
first 50
about.
people,
I know we've talked about a course or a packet of information that John had prepared some bullet points for, and I think we could even add this to that. And it would just be an Excel tool where it says, put in your monthly usage, put in your array size that you're anticipating, and with these rates, we could give them what their bill will be in time of use and the temporary Schedule A right up front before they make the purchase decision.
Yeah, I think as long as they have the information so that you can buy it up front, then I don't think that there's a reason for second tiered before.
Yeah.
But if we didn't have that, then I would say that we would want to give them a rate. And what Rocky Mountain Power did, just so you can know, is they went into a transitional period for 3 years, and they just said, we're going to study, you're going to be required to pay for the AMI meter. And then what they said was, we're only going to grandfather for 15 years from the install date. So they said, if you install today, then you go you get 15 years. A year later, you get 14. A year later, you get 13. So that's how they handled that transitional period as people moved to AMI. They did net. I know the questions here on net monthly. They did net on 15-minute intervals and not monthly. And that's typically how utilities used to seeing the data. And so that was one thing that they did move for.
Okay.
But that way you at least know where it's at.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I think that we would need to net off-peak usage and peak usage, obviously, to get to the time of use rate. The 6.6 rate, that's kind of the placeholder currently. I think we could do monthly. But when you're getting into the time of use, you would see how much backfeeding was done off-peak and how much backfeeding was done on-peak. And I think that's the level of detail you'd be netting at that point.
Yeah, so I think the scenario, and I think we all approved on these rates, but I think as that tiered, and I'd like to put a little more thought on it, as my opinion, because if I was to buy solar array, and then in January next year, let's say, my concern would be what is the value of that solar for the next little bit. So I think if we could just think through that a little bit. I don't know that I'm personally ready to vote. I don't know if anyone else is on the tiered system, but
I think we voted on the current tiered system, right? The
correct.
8.6 and the 9.7.
Yeah, that's right.
And the commercial side of that won't change, but on the residential, I think when we go time of use, the tiers are just going away at that point. So I don't know that there's any action item on tiered billing.
I'm just thinking the AMI tied to that tiered billing is what I'm talking. You know how you have your hours and those types of things. I think that's one thing I'd like to, or your years and your phase in with AMI and that piece specifically.
Gotcha. Okay, I was thinking.
Not everything.
I was thinking the
about.
structure. Of
no, everything. I'm good with everything here, just not the transition to the AMI meters.
Gotcha. Okay, and that's we haven't nailed that down on how that's going to work, so that can continue to be a topic of discussion.
Another thing about the off-peak and on-peak numbers is, I would like to discuss, not today, but discuss more. The 5 to 9 p.m. for on-peak. That is kind of a year average, but it's incorrect for winter and it's incorrect from summer. But it's kind of a year average where there really isn't that much of a peak period during winter time.
Right.
And in the summer, it's really wide.
Yeah.
And so we would probably want to have a summer rates versus winter rates or something like that.
And I did look into just summer, for example, because I thought peak really only matters in the summer at this point. Because that's what, if you look at winter, it's really pretty small compared to the summer.
And solar production is
the
tiny
annual
too.
average is because if you just create a rate just for that summer and you're rolling in all of our peak-related fixed costs, and you have just 3 months worth or 4 or 5 months worth of kilowatt hours, your peak rate is going to be really high, and your average rate's going to be low. So I didn't want to move there immediately because that discrepancy, once you go into 5 p.m. and that peak rate jumps up, I didn't think that was a good first step because it's such a big difference. So I averaged it over the whole year because that gives you a lot more kilowatt hours in the peak window that you can spread that cost over and not have so much rate shock immediately, if that makes sense. But I think
for all customers.
For all customers. But I think if you're talking about true actual costs and what's avoided, the summer really is what matters most. And so I'd agree that we're kind of easing into it by using the whole year. And eventually maybe we do just the summer. But that's a discussion we can have
Okay.
in the future.
Okay. And then thoughts on, do we want to move to the monthly true-up and discuss that? We have a few things we have to jump back up and talk about or push to the, I wanted to leave time for Alan. I think you were prepared on the max system size? Or push it back?
Yeah, we can push that back.
Okay. Okay, so we'll push that one. And we'll push this system impact study back. Did we want to talk on the monthly true-up?
What is that?
So that's just our billing. Do we want to true up every month like we talked? I think that was the preference.
Oh, so reconciling the bill every month instead of at the end of the year.
I think we did
We kind of
include
handled
monthly.
that with the residential when we voted on that. Didn't
Okay.
we?
So monthly?
Yeah, I thought we ended up saying
yeah.
monthly. We bounced around a little bit, and I think we did end up putting monthly into the
Yeah.
language on that one.
Okay.
Because we want to true it monthly. There's no sense trying to do this at the end of the year. Let's do it every month.
Okay.
That's
Or
cleaner.
actually,
It is.
now that I think about it, I think we deliberately did not include
We
that
did
in
not
there,
include
right?
it.
Because
That's
we were.
correct.
No.
So I think we're okay doing it monthly. I would make a motion, unless there's any debate that anyone feels like, but I'd make a motion to net that monthly on this new rate schedule for residential class.
Any questions to the motion? Can I have a s-
I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Yeah, but for accounting, it's a lot better.
Okay.
Do it monthly.
So I'm going to just circle these ones that are star. I've got stars, I've got squares, I've got lines on my notes here. So I'm going to try to just put together our next agenda. So just for moving through, we went through everything there. Just discussion items for next meeting. So if you guys have anything, and again, I'll do like I did last time and try to summarize all of these things. I'll go through my list, but if you have any others that you know you want to see on the next agenda, fire away.
Could we put this this paper that you handed out, Jordan? Could we put this in the meeting minutes so people can just go on there and just see it?
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Public, right?
Mm-hmm. I tried, sorry I didn't have that to you earlier, Stacy, but hopefully we verbally said everything for everybody on YouTube, and then those in the minutes will help.
Yeah. I think that'll answer a lot of questions for people.
Okay, so keep going. If there's any others, I'll try to clean this up here. So I'm going to leave AMI meters on with the discussion of on and off peak and the transitional period. We'll discuss the solar permit cost and then the net meter fee, and that'll include the meter cost as well. We'll have system impact study, max system size. I will keep CHP review. I was going to put date of effect on here. I don't know that I think we talked about January 1st for the grandfathering to end, but I don't think we've determined a date for all of these to go in effect. Is that something we'd like to discuss? Is that something we want to push?
Wouldn't the city council determine that? We're providing the structure. Wouldn't the council members then say this is when we're going to implement what's been presented?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that wouldn't be for us to decide.
The council can do that, but you can always make a recommendation as
Okay.
a commission.
I recommend we just say January 1st, 2018 for everything that we've voted on.
We
I
can
think
make
that's
that
fine.
recommendation, yeah.
I think that's fine. I would prefer it to be just the very next month, but truth be told, in the wintertime, it's not a high load. You're not collecting most of your revenue
Well,
over November, December anyway, I don't think, but
And something to think about is we're going to have to get this out to the public maybe and kind of go through it with people.
yeah. so that's fine.
It may be January by default. And
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you can, if you think the month after,
January is good because there won't be as much rate shock in the wintertime, too. Because August, September, well, we're almost through our high peak months. So I guess it really wouldn't matter if we went October through December.
So,
Speaking on that timing wise, if this goes to the council, I assume we want to have the max system size included, because Alan was saying we want to have the whole package. So these things we've just kind of ticked off the list. Do we want to send those along, or do we want to just, I guess it depends on what you want to see on your council
I would
agenda.
wait. I would wait till you get through and then send the whole package.
Do it all at once?
Mhm.
Okay.
so maybe we just, in the meeting minutes, we'll review every action. So when Stacy puts out the meeting minutes, we'll review all those and see if there's anything we want to bring back up before we approve it next time. And that'll cover all these topics that we've already just barely approved. I guess the question, my only other one that I put on here is date of effect. So I'll put that on there. I think we can vote on that. But what about public outreach? So you mentioned it. What do we want to do? You know, what's our timing? You know, I think, and I don't know if we put that as a topic for now and discuss it, or a topic for next time. But I think it's definitely crucial to. Is that after the city council? Is that before the city council?
Yeah, I think that when it's going to be on the agenda for the city council, people will really see it for the first time. And then once the council decides to approve it, I'm just trying to think, would it be better to,
Probably see it before so
Yeah.
that you can make that
That's-
decision that night.
so that they can comment, public comment? So we'll probably have a special meeting. Maybe that's what we'll end up doing. But it'll be up to the mayor and how he wants to handle that. Yeah.
So let's look at timing real quick. So our next meeting would be on October 3rd. And I think we can, sounds like next time we would do the cleanup on any miscellaneous things and approve the meeting minutes. And then when would be best to go to city council?
Well, I think you can present it for a public comment period, present it to the city council for public comment period of,
Okay.
you know, so many days. We like to do maybe a 30-day comment period or whatever. And then we'll take those comments and have further discussion and then make a vote on it.
Okay,
So,
that makes sense.
That sound about right?
Okay. So we'll present so we'll clean up everything on the 3rd, and then we'll do our presentation. When do you think would be best?
After we have our meeting on the 3rd, just to verify that we make sure we get everything done, because maybe we won't.
Okay.
Once we do, then you'll just need to reach out to the city manager at that point, tell him you're ready to present to the council. He'll tell you what agenda, what meeting
Okay.
he'll present it.
Okay.
And then we'll just let the whole commission know.
Okay. Perfect. Any other discussion items?
Just quick question for Alan. Do you have any thoughts on maximum system size, or you're not ready to say anything?
I didn't really want to get into another 20 or 30-minute discussion, but this is out of the study that we had the first month or two. I mean, they are recommending that you limit the solar to a percentage of their maximum demand or percentage of their total consumption. We shouldn't just, right now we have a 15 kW limit, and somebody who's going to use a third of that shouldn't be building a 15 kW system just to sell power. we need to have some kind of a reasonable way to get people to size them properly.
So that will be our next meeting's
Yeah, and
discussion.
I'm open to any input from anybody else, but I don't think a 15 kW is the right answer.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's good.
And maybe maybe we can discuss this next time, or maybe this is just a topic for further out. But I also want to just bring up the possibility of a customer that wanted to have a maximum of even a larger size, but they agree not to backfeed anything. Maybe, if someone wanted to store everything they produced and then consume it later in the day, I guess they almost become off grid at that point, but they would still be a grid tied customer. But I wouldn't want to. I would want to have some language in there to not limit someone that's not backfeeding. So they could, as long as they're obeying building codes, they could put a 25, 30 kilowatt system in, but they just wouldn't impact the grid at all.
So
that will just be a topic.
yeah, I'll add that. But food for thought. I don't know. Did we finalize our legal staff? I know that was under review last time. I know we were looking for an internal legal counsel.
Yeah.
Or do we have an external?
They're still working on hiring.
Okay.
On that. So, but if we get to a point where we need it, we can reach out to King and King.
Okay.
Who's temporarily doing it.
Okay. Because I believe what you're saying is, and I believe that the statute actually limits you from affecting people's demand side management. So I actually don't think it's that we can legally do that. So we may have to defer that question.
Okay.
I think
and
demand
if we
side
do,
management.
we'll just get with the city manager and make time for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll put it on here. I'm going to call it Rule 21. Rule 21 is what California is going over. I think it's a great topic, and it's kind of the next step of what's battery storage do. I think Patrick's concerns. What's the what can they put on the grid? How do they control it? Those types of things. So I'm just going to call it Rule 21. So when you guys see it, that's what that's called.
Yeah, and in fact, I was thinking maybe it would be a UAMPS attorney, not a regular city one for something like that.
Yeah, if you can reach out. I think it was determined in the Rocky Mountain Power the recent review that we could not affect the demand side management. It's just like changing out an LED light bulb, is what I believe where it was, but I would have to defer. I'm not a lawyer, so I think we should look at that.
Also, that leads into other issues too. You talk about, how much you're going to allow in each transformer and all those things too, as far as the percentage. So there's a lot more detail to it than just that.
So maybe that brings up a good point. Maybe, is there anything here that we would want to review? I mean, out of your recommendation, everything we've done today, is there anything that would need to go to legal counsel?
Only when we get down to the writing of
the agreement,
net metering agreement, then we'd have to.
Okay.
What's the smallest distribution transformer that still in use?
On a pad mount, it's 25 kVA.
25 is the smallest one?
Overhead, it's down to 5.
5? Wow. How many residents does a 5 feed? Is that just one home?
One.
Typically? Okay.
Does Kaysville have a 5?
At 5s, lots of 10s.
A lot of 10s and 15s, but really, do we have 5s out there still?
A few. Most of them are 10s. Is the smaller, small one now.
All right.
So that kind of limits the solar array right there. If there's a 5, then that kind of says 5 kW.
But I see it's down to like 20% of nameplate rating is what they're specking, so it'd be a lot less than 5.
Yeah.
What?
1.
Yep.
So they
They'd
couldn't
have to
even.
upgrade transformer. That's what.
But they couldn't pull 5 kW either. Then if it's 20%.
Well, it's derated.
So they couldn't even run their water heater on a.
It's, yeah, but the rating on the 20% is for.
That seems silly.
It's for power quality, not for capacity.
That's a limit for backfeeding, not a limit for consumption. So you can draw the whole 5, but you can't push back more than 20%.
So,
That still doesn't make sense to me.
There's a lot
Why
more
you'd allow
stuff,
one
a
but
lot
not the
more
other?
Studying a definition for that.
yeah, so that we can talk about that. That'll be under the system impact study. What's required there is a load flow analysis, and it says how much current is going in this direction, how much current's going in that direction. You know, what's the size of the wire, how long's the wire. You know, I know that we're not doing this, but I know that my feeling is we should be doing a system impact study for every system that comes on. You know, everything, even if not solar, everything should have a system impact study so we know, you know, our trip settings, the protection for the guys in the field, you know, those types of things. I strongly encourage a system impact study. But that's just me. So it's on here to discuss.
We do load studies on each transformer for normal, you know, but we don't have, like I say, we don't have a per se percentage, whatever, in black and white for, you know, for solar.
Right. And in my opinion, you know, you can't prepare for a, you know, as John's question of Rule 21 and what do, you can't prepare for a dynamic utility without having the ability to understand, you know, what's going on, you know, those types of things on your grid. So I think system impact study, maybe we can define that, what you guys do, and then, you know, what we need to do to make sure that, you know, those systems come up. For example, if you do a net metering application for Rocky Mountain Power, then what happens is they do a system impact study, and then those fees are kicked back to the customer, and they pick up all those fees. So that's another way, you know, that we don't get a surprise on, you know, that, you know, they put a 10 kW, and now we have to, you
Most of us.
yeah, have to,
And
minus
like-
160 have to pick up the cost for that. So,
So that's on a agenda item for.
yeah, so I got it on a system
Okay.
impact study.
Okay.
Any other last items, John?
Nope.
You also had permit costs on your list, right? That moved down.
Yes, I got permit costs. Make sure I'll write it again.
Yeah. I'm sure you said it. I just wanted to make sure.
That's what my sheet looks like, so it's a little.
So I've circled some that we haven't covered. I have A, D as in Delta, F, G, and have we done K? Total
Yeah.
subsidy for solar
Yeah, that
customers.
was the $200.
Okay. So really, it's just A, D, F, G.
Perfect. That's perfect.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's go to approval of minutes. So hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at those. I'd entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from, it was June 6th, right? June 6th.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I don't know if I could do that, but, okay. Call the public.
Well, great job. This is getting to where I can understand it, which is going to be really good for everybody else you share this with. Just Lorene Kamalu, Planning Commissioner, and when you were discussing your meetings concerning the rollout, I know that you thought it would probably take some time to update the rest of the council who's going to be, you know, so interested in maybe not all the detail, but certainly enough detail that they feel like they can represent citizens really well. So maybe I missed it somehow, but I still feel like they will probably need time with you before the meeting where you know, it comes before them to potentially vote. And again, it can be public, should be public, meeting, but so that they can just get all those, whatever is a significant question to them that's somewhat technical, you can share it in lay terms enough to catch them up. This is just really a big deal. This is excellent and tremendous for the city of Kaysville, and I think there's going to be a lot of interest. So as you're calendaring and trying to figure out when you're going to do what and how it's going to come together, it seems like if I were on the council, I would want time with you as a group, which is kind of a work session according to other meetings I've seen. Really a lot of bringing them up to speed so that they can be conversational when they get the questions from the public. So maybe you've kind of built that in and I've missed it a little bit, but I just thought I'd bring that up again. Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Spencer Luke, Kaysville resident. I'm actually going to kind of negate that just a little bit. Sorry, Lorraine, but I think there should be time between the Power Commission suggestion when the City Council votes on it. I don't think that's wise to come to the City Council, make a recommendation. All you have is time for call to the public. That's it. I think you need to have time between those two meetings, is my suggestion. I don't know if you guys disagree with that or not. I think when the package is put together, send it out so people know, and so they can give input to the City Council, or if they've had a meeting, but don't make the City Council vote on it at the exact same time you're presenting it, in my opinion. I think that's a great way to get people really upset, because everyone's going to think one way, and they'd like to talk to the City Council and get ideas as how they feel about that before they are doing that. Just a couple of things. Thanks again for all your time, guys. One suggestion: when you vote, please do it one at a time so the recorder can do it. When you guys go aye all at the same time, it should really be, am I right, Susan? Should be person by person. So that way, if there's a nay, it can be recorded as who is the nay, who is the aye. Am I wrong?
They with recommendations, it can be voted as a group. But the only thing that I would recommend is after the ayes, he should ask if there's any opposed, and then nay, and then
Just there's a way that they distinguish,
Yeah.
I think. Anyway, I want people, if they do a nay, to know who they are, and just so that way there's an accounting. Some other things. Okay, the AMI. I didn't know what the AMI means, but the question I had is that AMI meters will be installed, but if we're looking at grandfathering anyway, are the AMI meters going to be in before grandfathering is done? Bruce, do you know?
No.
So in 15 years, it still won't. Is the AMI supposed to be like the
Automatic metering infrastructure, yeah, so we get all that information.
Okay.
Come right back to City Hall, so.
I thought if it would be in 15 years, it was a moot point to discuss.
It'll be in the board.
Well, that's what I mean. So it'll be kind of a moot point then to sit there and say, we're going to do this with the AMI if the grandfathering is already going to be done. Anyway, just.
Worst case scenario would be 2 or 3 years to be completed with AMI.
But you see what I mean? I don't
Well,
remember exactly what I was saying.
The real purpose of AMI is not only for solar customers, but it's more to solve the time of use problem. That's probably
Yeah.
a bigger problem than the solar customers.
I just saw like a 10-minute discussion up here, and I thought, isn't this kind of a moot point if it's already in
Spencer, if
grandfathering?
it's Spencer, right?
Yeah.
So just to clarify, I think there's two potential grandfathering classes of customers. One is all of our customers to date, and then AMI may take a couple years to put in. And so between now, there's like this little 2-year window that we were discussing. Do we grandfather those customers again?
Okay, that makes
So you'd
sense.
have-
Sorry, I was thinking it was
Yeah,
just
that's
solar.
why-
so I'm
that's why
like, this
there was a
isn't making
separate
sense.
discussion.
Okay. I guess another question I have is does Kaysville City see value with solar at all? I understand the numbers, but has there been any value put on?
Define value. The value for the
Less
individual,
smog.
the value for the city.
Less city, less smog, less other things like that?
So are you asking, is Kaysville City willing to put in a solar farm?
No, I'm saying does Kaysville City at least see value to having people in their city have solar versus everyone just saying, heck, we don't see any value, you shouldn't have solar at all. That's what I'm getting
I don't
at.
think that's the feeling at all. And if that's the feeling that we've projected, then that's incorrect. So I think all of us see a value in solar. It now becomes kind of the citizens to let us know how much value they see in it, right?
That's kind of what I was getting at. Is the thing is you have to understand when this comes before the city council. Obviously, you're going to have solar customers, especially, that'll be upset if they feel like the city's not seeing any value in solar. I apologize, but like a 10-year, we don't care. 10 years. I mean,
so what that is right now, those that don't have solar, we're picking up your tab.
And
right?
I understand that,
So,
but at the same
so their voice has to be heard as well, because right now, they're picking up a tab that they get no benefit from, none.
And I agree. On
So-
the flip side, we didn't know that when we got it.
Didn't know what.
Didn't know what that
Didn't
you
know
were
that
getting
we're
a subsidy.
being subsidized.
I don't know that I would completely 100% agree with that, because the first sales pitch is, hey, the city, the state, and the feds are going to pay you for this.
If you're
No,
getting,
that's different than the power through the city.
if
Utility subsidy.
if your solar is getting offset at retail rate, you've got to understand there's a subsidy there. The city can't make any money giving you a straight across trade at retail rate. Then you're not contributing to the maintenance of the system and all the fixed costs. So
to answer your question, yeah, we see the value in solar, we do, but we're trying to make it fair for everyone, those that don't and those that do. Right now, as it sits, solar customers are not paying for the impact they put on the system.
And I think probably the fair way to put it is difference between Kaysville City and board and individuals, right? You have two people that care so much about it that they put it on their homes, right, on this board. I think that very first, I think maybe it was the first meeting, what we wanted to define was, what is our mission statement? And I think the mission statement might be the best way to summarize it. And I said it before, and I think it's really key for all of our values, because this is what we voted on as a team. Our mission statement is, and keep in mind that is, as it says here, Kaysville City Power and Light's mission is to provide reliable electricity with superior customer service at competitive price to the residents and businesses in Kaysville City. So we don't define, solar or not solar. We just want to have essentially a competitive price for the residents and have it be reliable. So that's the main focus.
I agree. And Patrick, I'm not trying to be accusatory to you.
No, and I don't take that.
But here's the thing you're going to run into, and one thing I'm a little frustrated with is I'm told one rule. It's like going to the city of Kaysville and they do mortgages. I know you don't, but I'm saying you did. And they say, here's the rate, and then all of a sudden 5 years in, it's, okay, we're going to change the rate on you. It's your investment. It's your house. But we're going to change the rate on you. That's not necessarily fair to the people that put the money in. Maybe people stretch themselves buying a super expensive house, now can't afford it because the rate is so high. That's not necessarily fair to them either. And I know that's not the best analogy, I'm sorry. But I'm trying to say that's some of the kickback you'll get from the solar customers, too.
I want to flip the question back. So what we talked about and what we approved today, we just want real-time feedback, right? We said grandfathering for every customer per meter for 15 years is what we voted on. Feedback on that.
And that was one of the things I was going to get at. So, 15 years, you're going to get kickback on people saying, well, Rocky Mountain Power's doing 2035, their rates are higher. I will take Patrick's thing. I can understand Kaysville City can't absorb that. I think that's a valid argument, and that's fair. But at the same time, I'm going to kind of leave. I was kicking and screaming back here. I wanted to get up and help, but I was thinking, okay, well, what if we do the 2035? The people that are in the last 2 years, they knew about that, but the people that set this up ahead of time did not. So how many of those people in the last 2 years have signed up? It was 110, right? So in my opinion, those people that signed up knowing that it was different, and that's another thing I talked about, is maybe you should have a different grandfathering for people that knew versus people that didn't. is another idea, to be honest. I think doing 18 years, I need to change I said last meeting, I said it was 10 years. I went back with my wife, and she wanted to kick me. It's more like 20 years is our return on investment on ours. Partly because we don't want to get it back, so we're using it now. So we're doing Christmas lights and other things like that. It's not that I necessarily want to, but I'm not going to give it back to the city for free. Sorry. We'll use it to do things, but my thought was maybe do 18 years for people that do 2035, and thus the people that got in the last 2 years are still getting close to their return on investment, but they knew. I liked what you said, Patrick. It's partly about what did you know getting into it. And I don't know about my honest opinion about customer versus meter, to be honest. Bruce made it very clear to us when we signed up. It was customer. It wasn't meter. And we've known. And in fact, we knew that we might lose it, so we asked about what's the cost to move it. And it was $2,000 to move our solar. So we knew about that ahead of time. So in some ways, maybe it's still worth the compromise doing different rates for people that did or didn't know. Anyway, just thought I'd throw some of those out because I thought that might kind of create a little of a compromise when everyone's like, well, let's do 10, okay, let's do 20. I thought, if we just stick it at like 20, 35 like Rocky Mountain Power, I don't see how people could be mad because Rocky Mountain Power's already done it, and we'd be like on their coattails a little bit. And those people in the last 2 years knew. Anyway, just thought I'd say a couple things on that. Alan, again, I know I'm throwing this out a few times, and I like what you're doing in regards to not having a specific amount. But again, my question still comes down to, and I don't know, but how about someone that makes their home more energy efficient afterward? Because that's what we did.
Well, we're not going back after the systems that are already there.
I agree.
But we're
new systems coming in.
Looking at new systems and making sure they're the right size.
And see, I know it muddies the waters a little bit, but are you looking at if they made their home more efficient? Because if you set it, like I said, we've set ours at 90. Well, there are times we go over because we've made it more energy efficient. We'd like to put insulation in our home, which would do the same. But now, how does that benefit me if I get penalized in power again? See what I mean?
Well, and the other thing,
it muddies it, I know.
Yeah, and something else, just so you're aware of it, we could go buy utility scale solar for less than 4 cents a kilowatt hour. That's where the value of solar is. So what we're still pushing back, or the rate we're setting for rooftop solar is still a lot better than what we could go buy it for. We're still working with the customers that have it or want it. Mm-hmm. I mean, we could go get it cheaper.
Okay, and like I said, I'm not trying to jab at anyone. I'm mainly trying to do these as I'm hoping that these are points I can make that realize that the public, probably this is more for Susan than you guys, but I think the public will probably bring to the meeting when recommendations are made, some things that they'll say. So,
and I think to mimic that, I think just so you know, I think that's really crucial, and I would love to see this filled up, so I don't feel like you're giving us bad questions. We're going to have to deal with this one way or another, and I can tell you that my phone number is on there, and I get calls all the time on this, believe it or not. So I strongly encourage, and I hope that you do go out there and tell people, because this is a lot. I really do appreciate, and I know everyone here would appreciate this setting versus, what it could be. And you look at some other utilities out there, and so we definitely appreciate you coming for sure and drilling us with questions. That's what we want you to do.
One other question I had is: are the solar customers the only ones paying for the new meter fee? We're talking about a new meter fee.
We haven't discussed that. That's just on the agenda for next time. Right now.
Talking about the customer charge, the $8?
No.
AMI meter fee.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about AMI meter, but my question is aren't all customers going to need an AMI meter?
Yeah, we haven't discussed who is paying that. That's on the next one.
And that's what I'm just saying. I think if you do it to just the solar, but yet everyone needs it, I don't know how that's exactly fair. If we're going to use fairness as a thing too.
It's true.
Well, everybody would have to pay for their own meter. Now, the solar customers might go to a different meter that requires more programming or more sensitivity than a normal residential guy. So let's say my meter is $65 and the meter that they need to put on your house is $195. Should I pick up the difference? Or should you pick up the difference with the array on your house? And that's the question. I think that's what
I don't know.
driving
Yeah.
that would be where the difference would lie, is the meter that would be on your house would be different than the meter on 95% of the people in Kaysville. But who offsets that cost?
Is it just one meter, or does a solar customer has two? That's where the difference in cost is. Everyone would have the AMI, but the solar customer needs a production meter also.
Well,
So,
again, just
But well
if we
noted.
keep tacking things on after the fact, it's just kind of another adding salt to the wound.
Sure.
It's just, anyway, I'm not saying I'm necessarily opposed to it, just trying to throw it out. Beyond that, that's all I had. So thanks, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And ladies.
Okay.
If I could make a comment, just along the lines that Spencer had mentioned, I came to this table advocating the solar side of things. I was fiercely wanting solar to be highly valued, and I on a personal level I do highly value it. But as we've looked at the numbers, Kaysville City, and since we're part of UAMPS, it's a really unique situation where we buy power in advance. We buy 45 megawatts of capacity, and we pay a certain amount for it. And everything we don't use at that moment, we sell back on the open market most of the time for less than what we paid for it. We get a great deal when we buy it, but then we have to sell it for less. And so it's kind of ironic that anything you do home improvement and energy efficiency wise or solar wise actually makes the power more expensive because we're using less of it and having to sell it back. So it's kind of this ironic thing that we've agreed to, and we've bought into this, and we're tied to some of these contracts for decades, and no one saw solar happening as quickly as it did, and so, but yet here we are tied to coal plants and gas plants and things that we're going to be having to buy into for a long time. And so it's kind of funny. Solar at a consumer level is really valuable, and it's amazing. Energy's falling from the sky for free, and we're able to use it. But then on the utility side, especially on an April 5th at 10 a.m., it's the last thing that the utility company wants to have is all this solar coming back to the grid. And it's an irony that I did not see coming into this, but it's a reality. And so that's where this burden to the grid comes from, is it actually can be burdensome during these times of year. And so anyway, I came here as the solar tree hugger member of this group, and now I'm seeing the value and the cost of solar. So there is value, but there's also some great costs just because of the structure of how we're buying power. So just wanted to say that.
I want to comment to that because my question on it then is, when Kaysville increases in size, how do we increase our intake? Because you can't tell me we're tied to something that's for the growth of Kaysville. There's got to be a way to change that.
Yeah, we buy more resources as the load grows.
But are we able to then decrease?
But that's the difference. You keep talking about energy efficiency in the same breath as solar, and it's not the same, because you're producing a lot of power during the middle of the day when we don't necessarily need it. We're excess 99% or 98% of the whole year. But as soon as it gets dark, your peak is the same as it was before you put solar on. So your impact's different. As somebody does, energy efficiency, it lowers their demand all the time. So
Is there a way to vary how much we're buying at specific times, though, is my question?
No, we have take-or-pay contracts on percentage of resource on all of the projects.
How tied are we to those contracts? Are we tied for a decade
So-
at this specific
No,
amount?
yeah.
And then we add to it as
We have
need
8
be?
different resources, and so they're all in different contracts, yes.
But how do we do it when we increase, is my question.
But whatever the next project is, you decide, determine what percentage of that project you'd like to be in on it, and then you take a percentage of that for whatever the length of that contract is also.
Well, here's another question. What if we take less of a contract on that one versus,
But we're already tied in for decades, we already have excess, and we're tied in decades already, so.
I agree, but if when we increase, instead of increasing what we would normally do, we increase a lesser amount? I don't know.
But the biggest problem with that is the solar's not helping our peak. We need that amount of power for our peak time.
Well,
which
part
is
of it,
from
yeah, I mean, it
7
depends on
7
what time we
p.m.
purchase it, right, Bruce?
What's that?
What time we purchase it, because the contracts,
So the contract is for the whole power plant. So whatever it produces, you take a percentage of that output.
is it the whole day?
It's not time. Yes, it's
15-minute intervals.
24/7.
At 15-minute intervals. They actually track it per 15-minute interval.
Okay. That's why
So,
I don't know,
but,
so.
yeah, that's.
That's why I just didn't know if there's a way we can change that at least to try and minimize it a little. I don't know, and that's not my forte.
The problem is we're not changing our peak yet because the solar's not helping our peak.
But it would still help on the non-peak, maybe.
We have to cover peak. We don't need it during the middle of the day. We need it, 7 o'clock at night.
Would it help to do the non-peak at different rates? I'm
Well,
just
we're talking about doing time of use.
That's the time of use.
That's our goal.
yeah, and that's what I mean is
So the long
I'm
run,
hoping with
you'll see, currently we calculated at 4.6 cents in the middle of the day, and then at night, your credit as a solar customer jumps up to 11 cents. So it's going to be, the value should reflect the way these costs behave, so everyone sees the cost signal appropriately.
yeah. But my thought was is there a way that the city can vary the contract so we're not paying as much during maybe off-peak? If it's not, I know it's not as much, but at least it's some.
There aren't very many generation plants that can follow peak. The plants are more efficient if they just run base load all the time. That full out, and they can vary a little bit, but that's what most of the plants, you spread over the cost of the plant by running it every day all year long. So
I should stop asking. This is what you guys are doing.
There are some plants that can ramp up and down a little bit, but they cost more for that power because you're not spreading that cost out over as many kilowatt hours throughout the year. So there are some peaking plants, but they're usually very pricey.
Well, and I know Bruce and I have talked about you always have to have enough. If the sun goes away, you have enough. But I don't know. I just wonder if there's any way we can vary it at all, unless
Battery
with time of
storage.
use or I don't know.
Yeah.
Battery.
It's coming.
It's coming.
Battery storage.
And Spencer's right, and I wasn't talking about the citizen time, but the citizens will absolutely want time to give their input. But it occurs to me, if you haven't just even invited or even encouraged the city council to come to your monthly meeting, just even telling them about that meeting, they will pick up things just watching this too and seeing how you have functioned as a body. So maybe that would be really good to encourage them to come to your last meeting or two if they can make it. Another thought.
Thank you. Okay. Any other last final thoughts? All right. So I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion.
Oh. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Has anyone ever voted nay to that question?
I thought you were trying to trick me. I'm stuck. I'm waiting for someone to say second.
I forget we have to